Okay, welcome back, class. And we'll begin on today's lecture about metropolitans and the transportation network in those cities. Now, definition of a metropolitan, that varies a lot according to different contexts, maybe by population, maybe administratively, uh, maybe a kind of a capital accumulation of wealth in certain areas that can be. So, definition of metropolitan that might vary. So, generally assumed a very complex, very big sized city can be termed as the metropolitan. Now, each, depending on the metropolitan, it's a huge networks. So it requires a huge city networks, a road network, in which a lot of things can should be considered. So basically, that city can be first of all can be subdivided into your communities, districts, and metropolitan whole area. So by district over here, I mean in America, your sub city or you can say division of cities by district and then by communities or neighborhoods. So in our case in Pakistan, we can call it maybe town, seal, maybe right of a whole city. So city, this districts. So don't get confused by that. That's not a district. Our district means implies something different. Uh, so depending upon those kind of, I'll show you the figure that to clear up a lot of things. Yeah. So at the city level or at the community level, at the very smallest level, we are very much concerned about streets, small streets, and basic provincial services, basic services and residences. So we are very much concerned about them. And okay, might be some kind of maybe cluster of the small commercial or industrial activities, cottage industries kind of thing. So at community level, we are very much concerned with streets, basic services, residency, and a cluster of commercial activities maybe. So at a slightly smaller scale, at the neighborhood level, I would say um, sub-city level, tehsil level, town level, we can see that we are now very much we are now focusing maybe employment, where people are traveling from one district to another. So employments maybe, and we will now be concerned about main roads, how those roads are laid and in which people traveling. So at this level now we see I would say conglomeration of communities together. So a lot of communities are now depending upon at the district level. They are under consideration and with how these people are commuting for their employments. So that, but at the city level now, yeah, because it has become now more complex. A lot of, let's say, assuming that these are small districts and how they are related to each other and how they are going to be now interlinked or connected with each other. So primarily, we in metropolitans we use highway or signal-free corridors, and maybe some transit systems are there. So we use these kind of high transit systems, and maybe have some kind of major terminals and ports. So these are the dominant features of your at the city level. So at a metropolitan can be subdivided into community, districts, or city, and in each, depending upon the scale, we need to provide or we need to look into different type of transportation services which is required. Same thing. Yeah. So ultimately, there it is again some researchers they have hypothesized that maybe from traditional walking cities we can now what are the sort of pathways or options available to us and what the options available to the administrations that what sort of transportation network do they uh, envision in their master plans or future development plans. So they can't be like in Walkie City, can we can move towards bus transit oriented. So when we were you remember talking about uh, like Walkie City and then that horse kara era or streetcar, that kind of transit system is there. So we can move into a kind of a bus transit city predominantly, which buses are there to use. So one alternative is that if we go on developing your public transportation systems, then ultimately we will then kind of evolve into transit cities in which all of our cities are all of the cities depending on the public transit. Or maybe we use that kind of bus as a bus rapid system in which it is excluded and then maybe integrate with the traffic. So that is there. So maybe buses and traffic. Or we can alternatively move towards purely towards car cities. So we need to have as we evolve into different types of options are there. Uh, the mobility levels needs to be increased. In this contemporary era and modern era, we need high mobilities. So these are there. So what sort of development path do we need to do? So are we opting for a private oriented development, maybe capitalistic? Some of you might assume. So we need to go for automobile dependency, or should we go for public or benefit of all kind of a socialistic approach? So these options are there. So what do you think? Where do we stand? Our cities stand. And which sort of development pattern have we adopted, or at which stage do you think we are? Anyone? Yes. This hand. Ahmed, you have raised the hand, right?
Sir, I hear
Yes,
you.
Sahid, yes, please.
सर वी आर हेडिंग मोर टूवर्ड्स द प्राइवेट डेवलपमेंट जिसमें कार सिटी ज़्यादा बन रही हैं और ट्रांसपोर्ट हमारा जो है सिस्टम वो ख़राब से ख़राब तो होता जा रहा है.
So you're thinking that we have this kind of whatever sort of public transportation system we have. So there are two divergent pathways or shortcuts that we are assuming. So either we can go for two, that is transit city, or we can go for car city. So you're saying that we are opting for paths this
कार
divergent
सिटी
part. Okay, good. So yeah. Anyone else? But depending on the cities that we have. Let's see what the future holds for us. So, of course, these all cities. I'm not saying this is the best option. A or B or C is the best option. All these cities or this urban transportation development, they have their own disadvantages and advantages. Okay, pros and cons is always there. So I would not. The path is open for you to discuss and to understand. But I'll give you these options are there now. It's your choice as a planner that whichever you think is the best option for you. So this is being again uh, developed through uh, having a research that what kind of potential pathways are there for urban transport development. Okay, so moving on. Yeah, so this is a way of representing a prospect-oriented development. If you don't know, so what is transit-oriented development? City? Sometimes the center is fully pedestrianized, and only you can go for public transport, and all highways are bypassed the city center. But for traditional or car dependency, the city center is even crossed by your high speed or highway within the city center. So again, like we were talking about that central place theory in which a city center is there, a town center is there, and it has its own CBD, and a village center maybe in the outskirts is there, and it has their own city center. So how they're interacting with each other. So this is also kind of a spatial interaction network. Okay. So the now one of the most uh, impo- um, important, I would say, types of network is there. Like we need to expand transportation supply in order to accommodate the population and the growing number of vehicles on the road. We need more roads. Maybe we increase the capacity of the roads. So traditionally, or more or less, we are very much because of the automobile, it has become very difficult to analyze urban structures, so the spatial structures. So for that, it is thought that the metropolitan transportation network can be divided into four types. So your first type is this completely motorized network, the weak center, the strong center, and the traffic limitation. So I would go into the figure, and that would help you understand. So the first is your completely motorized network. So it represents kind of a very much automobile dependent city with the limited centrality. There is no, you cannot see that what is the center of the city, and kind of very dispersed activities are happening in this kind of road network. Massive road networks, and you can see maybe some very high capacity highways are crossing the city. Public transit kind of is not prioritized. It's not is there, and road these highways, they are they are fed by these different arterial, I would say, secondary roads, which are acting as a feeders for the highways. So a lot of traffic on the highways, maybe mobility is more, speed is more, and that might be like this kind of road network is administratively, maybe your government or your administration, they want this kind of development is there. So what are the properties? These are some of the properties, and these are like some American cities most dominantly. So this they are like having a grid pattern, and that is overlain by highway corridors. So completely motorized network is there. So that is type 1 network. So let's go to type 2. So type 2 is basically a weak center representation. Again, it is very much apparent in American cities where activities are mostly located in the periphery as well. So, but here in the city center, we see some kind of a centrality. There is kind of a centrality in the city. Uh, uh, we assume that we will have a kind of a concentric kind of development, like in the centers that will expand from the city center, and the city will grow outskirts, and that will be complemented by the transportation networks. But again, here you can see that okay, transit lines are coming to the city center, so are the highways, and the highway is also linked by kind of a ring road. We call it ring road, bypass, different names are out there. But in Pakistan, commonly known as ring road. So ring road is there, but here in this kind of network, you can assume that the public transport is not prioritized again. It is already, although it's present here, this kind of a project form, but it is not prioritized. It's underutilized, I would say. Uh, and what are the others? Let me see the properties. So some of the properties are yes, emergence of ring roads are there in the periphery. Then all of them are converging sometimes in the city center and sometimes on the your highways. And these cities are like some examples are if you see Melbourne, San Francisco, Boston, Chicago, and Montreal. So these are some cities, Canadian and American cities, which exhibits this kind of a transportation network behavior. Okay, so this is type 3. Now here we are very much strongly emphasizing on your city center and very highly dense your urban center with the well-developed public. So that is commonly seen in European cities and sometimes in Asian cities, in China as well. So high density development, a lot of accessibility to the public transit stations, like everyone can access transit stations, and they can hop into the transit system for traveling purposes. And there is limited use of your highways in the city center, or although it is that ring road or highways are in the outskirts and it is linking your periphery, but in the city center or in the center, so whole of the city is highly dense, the city center is highly dense, and that all the transportation needs are being provided by the by the transit systems. So these are some of the examples are Paris, New York, Shanghai, Toronto, Sydney, and Hamburg. So they exhibit this kind of a transportation network exists over there. Okay, so last one is the transportation. Okay, last one is your traffic limitation network. So although it is also have a strong city center, the main the urban areas have kind of a traffic rule, and model preferences is given on transit system. So it is like type. It is type 3 also exhibits kind of transit. Yes, transit oriented, but here highways are very much present as well. So they are also providing access to transit, and they are complementing the transit system. But we are purely limiting in the city centers and all the settlements. We are limiting your highway development. So all the periphery development areas are also linked with the present transportation, the transit system. And of course, city center is highly dense, but even the periphery areas, far off areas, that are connected by the public transit. And here, limited, I would say, driving or public-private transportation is limited. Okay. So, and I'll give some of the examples of these cities. I'll give you London, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Vienna and Stockholm. So these are the areas which have limited. There you will very least prioritized, in which you're actively or proactively your private car use is discouraged, and have whatever sort of circulation is taking place is only through public transport systems. So I'll give you. So this is a comparative picture in which these four type of road networks are there, and depending upon your settlements or periphery and the city centers and CPDs, we can use different approach kind of a network. So these are the four predominant, or I would say categorization of metropolitan transportation networks. Those are the four types. Any question till now on these four types of transportation networks? Metropolitan transportation networks. I hope it is clear. I mean, figures that tell a very good picture. Okay. Okay. So I'll have a brief intro about the ring roads. So why the ring roads are provided in the large metropolitan areas? It is very common. It is provided, and because of the rapid expansion, we need to have a ring road, and it is so very commonly used in America. It is very much commonly used, and most of as the road word implies, ring road. So it is predominantly a kind of a circular radial development pattern, and it links your highway interchanges in the outskirts. So why they are constructed? Well, basically the main purpose is to provide accessibility. But the question then arises is, at what time do we need to construct a ring road? Okay, there is an example, like let's say there is a traffic load minutes. Let's talk about in minutes that we are traveling from point A to B. Okay, so in without ring road, let's see this figure. How many minutes it takes to reach from A to B? Anyone? A to B. Like these are minutes.
30 minutes.
30 minutes. And by constructing a ring road, how many time will it take now? 20 minutes, right?
20 minutes.
So is it now like you can save 10 minutes, right? So that is the point where we can think about providing the ring road. Okay, so maybe we provide a ring road and we reduce the congestion in the city center, and by kind of use it as a bypass. Okay, but now there is no definite method out there which tells us that what is the most appropriate time to construct a ring road. There is no hard and fast rule for that. You need to consider many other things: resources, construction, degradation, and everything. So, but ring roads kind of give you alternative routes to bypass the city center. But sometimes what happens when everyone starts using the bypass, and bypasses that also that ring road also started getting congested. And the most important thing about ring road is that it gives a kind of incentive for expansion. Wherever there is ring road, there will be development more along the interchanges. And wherever there is development on the interchanges, lot of traffic will be encouraged to construct a development along the ring roads. And ultimately, that ring road will be congested as it itself. And the main purpose to have a bypass or reduce your transportation costs, that will be like kind of meaningless. So what happens that maybe after 30, 40 years, you need to have another ring road. After 40, 50 years, another ring road. But that is like, okay, that for the time being, it solves the problem, but how will it influence your future development? So that ring road have a very, for urban planners at least, for transportation network planners, it's very good that reduces your congestion in the city center. But for the future development plan, ring road needs to be accommodated within the master plan to understand that if we construct a ring road, what sort of future development will happen in parking in the city. Okay, so ring road have very complex. It has again advantages as well as disadvantages. So the main issue ring roads are the interchanges. Construction of like
सर आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही.
Rizwan, what was the last thing you heard?
सर ये अभी अपने रिंग रोड की कॉन्सेप्ट पे चल रहे हैं.
Okay. What was the last thing you heard about ring road?
रिंग
सर
रोड
के इसके बाद और रिंग रोड बढ़ती जाती हैं इन 40 years और बढ़ती जाती.
Okay. So ultimately, so for a planners at least, there are advantages and disadvantages to ring road. And as a planner, if you construct a ring road, that gives you a very high potential to the developers to have an urban expansion along the ring roads. So for the time being, ring roads, they solve a problem of decongestion in the city centers, but ultimately it would also give rise to the urban sprawl of the metropolitan areas. So that ring road, well, it has advantages and disadvantages. So in order to have a potential implications of this ring road on in the future, the concept of ring road or the idea, or I would say the planning of ring road would need to be incorporated in the master plan of the city. So that would really help us in understanding or I would say managing the ring road development, the development caused by the ring road. Okay, so the main issue with this ring road is uh, development of city secondary centers. This kind of centers or secondary CBDs at the interchanges. So that has a very bad implication, especially. So these clusters started emerging on the interchanges, and they, well, some people call it a peri-urban extension as well. I'll show you the figure. Okay. So let's say these kind of interchanges happening, and a lot of development started to happen along it. A lot of potential is created along the interchange, and that interchange encourages a lot of development. And ultimately, that interchange itself becomes congested, and that will ultimately like have an implications of your huge all the in and out. So sometimes what happens, I think you have noted maybe in some cities when you are going to enter the city, a lot of traffic is on the interchanges. As soon as you pass the interchange, which was supposed to reduce the traffic, when you enter the city, you are having a smooth drives. But if the interchange in the city entrances, a lot of congestion is happening. If you like, let's say talk about GT road. So GT road, all the interchanges of the GT road or the connections of the main city centers, that is very complex. So a lot of development is being done on the interchanges. So that is one of the implications of your ring road as well. So any question till now? I think, yeah, I have finished. Yes. Any question, class? Hiya. I hope I'm clear. Yes, Ali.
मैंने हाथ खड़ा कर दिया।
Yeah.
Sir, I wanted to ask कि जो आप last point explain कर रहे थे, this basically जो secondary centers होते हैं, they basically जैसे हमने वो मल्टी न्यूक्लियाई थ्योरी में पढ़ा था कि ट्रैफिक आती है, डेवलपमेंट होती है, and then slowly centers बनते जाते हैं. तो isn't that how cities grow basically?
Yes, that precisely. But I'm saying because cities will grow definitely, and we will create kind of a multiple CBDs at the outskirts. But now we are at the cost of transportation network. CBD is constructed, but what about the transportation system now? How that spatial interaction between this city secondary center and the city secondary will happen? And what about the roads, the transportation system? What would be the load on the transportation? That will also be, of course, by developing a multiple nuclei, it's very good. It is highly encouraged in metropolitans, but it will have an effect on your transportation. So you need to know that just constructing a CBD is not enough. You need to consider what would be the potential impacts on the transportation networks itself. So basically, I'm saying that it goes hand by hand. Yes, Alia?
Sir, so perhaps we should set in policies that limit the spread of secondary centers जो ये हमारे बनने होते हैं. अगर हम उधर पॉलिसीज ऐसी बनाएं कि लेट्स से अब ये रिंग रोड बन गई, अब इससे आउटसाइड बस देयर इज गोइंग टू बी अ ग्रीन बेल्ट और इससे आगे सिटी नहीं एक्सपैंड करेगी. पॉलिसीज लगा दें कि आप लैंड पे यहाँ पे डेवलपमेंट नहीं कर सकते, ना कमर्शियल एक्टिविटी ना हाउसिंग एक्टिविटी.
Yes, you're right, but that is the problem. We have discussed in the comparative analysis as well that it's very difficult to define a city boundary or something.
हेलो सर, आपकी आवाज़ चली गई.
Hamza, can you hear me now?
यस सर, अभी आई है.
Okay. So I think I was talking to Salia about the secondary center. Of course, I was saying that once you create that secondary city or an interchange, you have created a potential, you have created a demand. And once you have created a demand, supply will come automatically. Principles of economics. So
Sir, then
what we can do,
it's going to
we
happen
cannot.
a development. Matlab it's inevitable to avoid development. Perhaps we should maybe design our transportation systems in accordance to a future extension.
Yes, that is precisely the point. That you need to know that okay, secondary centers or CBDs will automatically develop. That is inevitable, like you said. But we need to plan it and we need to add it to our current master plans. And we need to supplement it or we need to support it by the necessary transportation. I would say, sorry, transportation alternative, or I would say, like you need to provide transportation system, like plan the transportation system side by side. So it needs to be integrated together. So you need to know you need to know before you can plan for that. Any other question? I hope I'm audible enough. Okay, class. So thank you. I'll stop the recording.